Alright, hello everyone. Today I am going to be going over how to make a plot in Google Sheets. And we're going to be focusing on making a scatter plot, as that tends to be the most useful in sciences. We're going to go over various ways of labeling this and things that we can add to it, like a trend line and seeing what that trend line is. So to start off, just open up your Google Sheets. You can go to Google for that, and then once you are in Google Sheets, you'll see something like this in the top left corner, and we are going to start by adding in some data. Now, when you're adding in your data, you have to think about, what do I want my horizontal axis to be, and what do I want my vertical axis to be? Or what is my x-axis, what is my y-axis? Because the way this is going to work is that whatever you put on the left, whatever data you put on the left between two columns, that's going to be your horizontal axis. And what you put on the right is going to be your vertical axis. So here, let's say for my horizontal axis data, that I just have some simple data here, 5 data points, and then I have some data going down. We won't overcomplicate it here. So there I have my data, and then from this I want to go and I want to make a plot of this data. So to do that, I'm going to select and then select all of my data between the two columns, so everything's highlighted, and then I'm going to click Insert. In Insert, we're then going to choose Chart. Okay. All right. So then from here, we should see something pop up in the middle of our screen. So let me get that out to you. So you should see something like this now, a bar chart. This is typically the default chart that is used in Google Sheets, just a histogram of your data. So the label for the data is then the column A in our example, and the height of the histogram is column B in our example. But this isn't really what we want. We want instead something more like a scatter plot. And so to get a scatter plot, what you want to do is go over to the far right of Google Sheets, and over there you will see something like this, a chart editor. And underneath this you'll see setup and customize, and then you will see some chart types that you can choose from, along with some other details that we won't focus on here. So instead of a column chart, or what is essentially a histogram, we want to select a scatter plot. So if you click on this, a bunch of options will pop up: lines, area, bar, column, pie, lots of things. But we're just going to scroll down, and then we are going to choose scatter. There's two options here: bubble chart, scatter chart. We're going to choose scatter. Okay, so now we have our scatter chart. So if we then go back to our graph, we'll see something like this, where we can now see our data points as dots, and along the x-axis is our column A information, and along the y-axis is our column B information, our column B data. Now, this is great. We're making some progress here, but this isn't totally helpful. We don't really know what the axes mean because we haven't labeled them. We don't have a title for this particular graph. We don't have any trend line fits. We don't have any error bars. It's missing a lot of information. So what we can do is we can go back to our chart editor, and in our chart editor we can click on Customize, and here this will bring up a bunch of options that we can work from. And the first one that you might notice is the chart and axis titles. So this one is nice because you click on it and you can start labeling things. So vertical axis, that would be our y-axis. I'm just going to call it y-axis here. And then if you click on that same drop down, you can choose a chart title, subtitle, horizontal axis title, appropriate information, x-axis here, and then A didn't populate. There we go. And then we go to chart title, because why not? And this is just our example. All right, so that, if you then go back over to our graph, you will see that all of those things have now populated. We have our example graph, we have a y-axis, and we have an x-axis. Okay, great. But now we want to do a little bit more with that. So we're going to go back to our chart editor, and we're going to try to add some more information here. So in series, we can do things with our data a little bit. We can change the color of the data, which maybe is helpful. Here, we'll just change it to some other color, orange, doesn't really matter. We can change the opacity of this, which is essentially just how solid that material is. We can change the size of our data points, so let's make them slightly bigger. Why not? We don't have to use circles. We can change what they are, and all those things might be interesting and worth doing. Then down here, where we have some more interesting things to be done, we have error bars, data labels, and trend line. The first thing you're going to want to do with this is click on a trend line. Typically, we usually want to fit our data with some kind of trend. Usually this is going to be linear, so the first thing that pops up is linear, and the color is going to match whatever your data color is initially, but you can change that if you like. But we can start with linear, and then we have a bunch of options in here if we click on it: moving average, power series, logarithmic, polynomial, exponential, linear. Typically we're going to use linear, but those other options are available. We can change how thick our line is, and we can change how visible our line is. Then usually we don't just want to see a graphical representation of the fit. We want to have some numerical information about how that fit went, what are the values of the fit. And so to get that information under label here, instead of custom or none, we are going to click use equation, and this will graph the equation and show our squared. Our squared is a goodness of the fit parameter. And so now we go back over to our graph. We can see all of the information has been populated. We've changed colors. We have different data points now. The triangle is telling us which data point is being fit. We see that we have a -1 for the slope. We have 7 for the b in our y equals mx plus b fit. R squared is 1, showing us that this is a perfectly linear fit. And so that is kind of all the information we really need for this graph. If we really want to get more complicated with this, which in some situations we might, we could add error bars by clicking on this error bar thing here, and this will add bars above and below our data points. It only does it for the vertical axis, and then we could choose some value. Typically we have standard deviations that we're using, and then we could just choose some value of interest. And it doesn't really matter what that value is here. This is just to give the error bars some value, but we'll stick with percent for now. Just give it a 5% value. Okay. We don't need data labels. All right. And so now we have 5% errors on our error bars. And that's most of what you will need for plotting in Excel, at least at some basic level. So here it would be our final product. Looks pretty nice. Looks like some data that's actually been worked on and been made for presentation. All right. If you you have any questions regarding this, if there's something else you'd like to see, let me know in the comments, or else just if you're in one of my classes, let me know via the communications that we have there. All right. Thank you for giving this a watch. Hope it's been helpful, and that you have a good rest of your day.